Extreme weather can cause physical changes in the environment that affect social and economic situations. In extreme changes such as land damage, long floods, and soil erosion, affected residents will be forced to move to other, safer areas. Disaster relief can provide temporary land and support, but the lives of affected populations can be disrupted and livelihoods can change with limited or even no preparation. Frequent extreme weather and food and water insecurity can lead to forced displacement and migration. Increasing evidence points to this. Most displacement and migration due to climate change occurs within national borders. Since 2008, extreme weather has displaced more than 20 million people every year worldwide. The largest number of people displaced each year comes from Asia South, Southeast and East, followed by Sub-Saharan Africa. About 3.3 billion people now live in high vulnerability countries. High community vulnerability is caused by poor health conditions, poverty, migration, conflict, gender inequality, injustice, education, high debt, weak institutions, and lack of governance and infrastructure capabilities. The complexities of gender, race, class, ethnicity, sexuality, indigenous identity, age, disability, income, migrant status, and geographic location often create vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. Unfortunately, current strategies are not enough to overcome the impacts of climate change. Women have a disproportionately higher burden of family responsibilities during and after a disaster crisis compared to men. This is exacerbated by gender inequality in financial and economic situations, which makes women especially vulnerable to experiencing the social impacts of climate change and its disasters. During pregnancy, women have a double burden. Their daily duties as primary caregivers and responsible for most household chores are multiplied by the burden caused by pregnancy. Even worse, disasters due to climate change will make the burden even heavier. Children are also the part of the population most vulnerable to disasters caused by climate change. In Indonesia's coastal areas, women experience a double burden. They are responsible for household chores, but also responsible for helping their husbands and earning a living for the family. In areas where rising sea levels inundate their homes, women face difficulties in preparing their daily meals, which then drives them to buy takeout food at higher prices, and that means additional expenses for the family. Disasters due to climate change have also disrupted prenatal care, adding to the risks for already high-risk pregnant women and resulting in difficulties for mothers and children after birth. Extreme weather has also created other disasters for women. Violence against women increases in any disaster, and there is ample evidence of this. This violence can take the form of sexual harassment, domestic violence, and other violence. Susceptibility of pregnancy to infection. Pregnancy increases the severity of some infectious diseases, such as influenza, malaria, hepatitis C, and herpes simplex virus infections. The severity of the disease becomes higher with increasing gestational age. Pregnant women are more vulnerable to malaria transmission and HIV infection. In endemic areas, the frequency of P. falciparum malaria is greater in pregnant women than in non-pregnant women in highly endemic areas. Plasmodium vivax, the second most common malaria infection, can cause low birth weight and anemia. Mothers in first pregnancies are more susceptible to malaria due to P. falciparum and P. vivax than mothers in second and subsequent pregnancies. Susceptibility also occurs to influenza, hepatitis E, herpes simplex, toxoplasmosis, varicella, measles, and HIV infection. Vulnerabilities can also change into severity levels. Children born to mothers infected with malaria are susceptible to malaria infection. The incidence of malaria among babies born to mothers with malaria is higher than among children born to mothers who do not have malaria. Babies born to mothers infected with malaria during 6 months of gestation have a 7.4 times higher risk of being infected compared to non-malaria pregnant mothers. During the ages of 6 to 12 months, they had an 8.5 times higher risk than those born to non-malarial mothers. Furthermore, infected babies also tend to be malnourished at the ages of 3, 4, and 9 months. At the age of 12 months, these children had lower intelligence and motor skills compared to babies born to non-malarial mothers. Summary of research results on the impact of climate change on maternal and child health. The impact of climate change on maternal health has occurred and been proven in many countries around the world. The available data describes conditions in the country where the research was conducted. However, this does not mean that this impact does not occur in other parts of the world where data does not yet exist.